China are on the rise. The two giant neighbors have had yet another skirmish, and this time it is in India's eastern state of Arunachal Pradesh. Briefing the Indian Parliament, the Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has said that the Indian Army had resisted an attempt by China to change the status quo at the line of actual control in the Tawang sector. Listen in to what Rajnath Singh had to say.
9 दिसंबर 2022 को पीएलए ट्रुप्स ने तवांग सेक्टर के यांसे एरिया में लाइन ऑफ एक्चुअल कंट्रोल पर अतिक्रमण कर स्टेटस को एक तरफा बदलने का प्रयास किया। चाइना के इस प्रयास का हमारी सेना ने दृढ़ता के साथ सामना किया है अध्यक्ष महोदय, और इस फेस ऑफ में हाथापाई भी हुई है। भारतीय सेना ने बहादुरी से पीएलए को हमारी टेरिटरी में अतिक्रमण करने से रोका और उन्हें उनकी पोस्ट पर वापस जाने के लिए मजबूर कर दिया। अध्यक्ष महोदय, इस झड़प में दोनों ओर के कुछ सैनिकों को चोटें भी आई हैं और मैं इस सदन को अवगत कराना चाहता हूं कि हमारे किसी भी सैनिक की न तो मृत्यु हुई है और न ही कोई गंभीर रूप से घायल हुआ है।
The face-off, in fact, took place on the 9th of December at about 3 a.m. local time. And according to reports that have come in, at least about 3 Indian Army units and almost 600 Chinese soldiers were in fact present at the time of the clash. The Defence Minister further added that the Indian Army in fact pushed the Chinese back. The PLA soldiers who engaged in the incursion attempt were pushed back by the Indian Jawans, and both Indian and Chinese soldiers ended up suffering injuries in this skirmish. Subsequently, the local commander of the army held a flag meeting with his Chinese counterpart on the 11th of December. In the meeting, India has said that the Chinese side was asked to maintain peace. New Delhi has said that it has also raised the matter with the Chinese side at diplomatic level as well. But will the government this time take a stern action against China? Because the face-off in Arunachal's Tawang sector is not the first one. A similar such transgression had taken place in the month of June in 2016, when around 250 PLA soldiers had transgressed into the area. But no clashes had been reported back then. In 2020, clashes in Galwan took India and China in a completely different direction. The clashes in eastern Ladakh along the line of actual control left 20 Indian soldiers dead. There were casualties on the Chinese side as well. And this was one of the bloodiest skirmishes between the two sides in over 45-year-long history. Now, despite multiple rounds of military-level talks to try and diffuse the tensions, there have been no signs that China is sincere in resolving this dispute. In fact, it has only been provoking India further, and China plans to expand areas in the periphery on the lines of the Chinese dream projected by the Chinese President Xi Jinping. Now, the question, of course, is how far can India, of course, resort to diplomatic level of talks? For how long can India stay silent on Chinese provocations, and for how long can India resist giving a free hand to its forces? These, of course, are some pretty important questions, but bear in mind that at the time when this transgression was attempted by the Chinese, the Indian army responded very firmly and pushed the Chinese back. Alright, now to give us more perspective in terms of what, of course, is unfolded at the line of actual control and as to how things could, of course, proceed from here, we're being joined by Mr. Jitendra Ojha, who is a former intelligence officer and also a geopolitical expert. Now, Mr. Ojha, what has happened at the line of actual control? Some people would say, considering what has been happening over the course of the last few years in terms of how China has been trying to change the status quo at the line of actual control, do you think this was surprising at all that an incident of this nature has now taken place?
Not at all. I think much before this 2020 Galwan also, while speaking with a group of intellectuals and experts, I had said that it's only a matter of time, and this was likely to come under Xi Jinping's era itself. The way he was decimating his political opponents, the way he was quoting controversies, and we have recently seen how he has decimated whatever little structure of collective leadership that has been built in China. So it's always very natural for an autocrat, to rake up issues like this, be aggressive and belligerent with neighbors to consolidate himself. The way he has altered the composition of even Standing Committee of Politburo. So this was very much expected. He had carried out very restructuring of military also, creating 5 commands, and maximum emphasis has been given on Western Command which looks on the Indian side. So
Right.
this kind of thing was inevitable, and we are going to face more of these aggressions in days to come.
Absolutely. Stand on China while firmly backing India's position. Strong statements have come from both the State Department and the Pentagon. U.S. State Department has said that it strongly opposes any unilateral attempts to advance territorial claims by incursions across the line of actual control. The Pentagon has gone further, calling Chinese incursion a growing trend by Beijing to assert itself and an attempt to be provocative towards U.S. allies.
DoD continues to closely watch developments along the line of actual control at the India-China border. We have seen the PRC continue to amass forces and build military infrastructure along the so-called LAC, but I would defer you to India in terms of their views. It does reflect, though, and it's important to point out, the growing trend by the PRC to assert itself and to be provocative in areas directed towards U.S. allies and our partners in the Indo-Pacific. And we will continue to remain steadfast in our commitment to ensuring the security of our partners. And we fully support India's ongoing efforts to de-escalate this situation.
Meanwhile, the White House also commented on the skirmishes which took place in the Tawan sector of Arunachal Pradesh in northeast India. The White House press secretary said that the Biden administration is glad that both India and China quickly disengaged after the skirmish, further emphasizing on how Washington is closely monitoring the situation and has encouraged both sides to utilize the existing bilateral channels and also discuss the disputed boundaries.
We are glad to hear that both sides appear to have quickly disengaged from the clashes. We're closely monitoring the situation. We encourage India and China to utilize existing bilateral channels to discuss disputed boundaries. Again, we're glad to see that there's been some disengagement on the clashes at this time.